Hey guys, what's up? MadSeason here, back with another video for you. So Shadowlands is on the horizon, and I wanted to make a casual what I want from the expansion, and what I think we'll get from the expansion video here. So, like many others, I got the chance to actually play the beta and get a good and basic feel of what the expansion is looking to be like. And in the effort of constructiveness, I wanted to start with the good, and what I like, and what I'm looking forward to. First is recently we had quite the bombshell dropped on us. The expansion has been delayed. Did you know that the last time that this happened was back during the Burning Crusade in 2007? It's a good call in my opinion. If you saw my Shadowlands preview, or if you've just played the beta yourself, you know that it was not ready for release. Lots of bugs and issues with the first raid. Covenants are still getting big changes, so they're taking a little more time with it, which is good. It shows integrity, and hopefully will result in a much smoother launch. So there's a lot to unpack here in terms of features. In no particular order, let's just start with Torghast. Torghast I enjoyed, I will say. I don't think it's the hallmark feature of the expansion. Like when Shadowlands is over, I don't think people will define it by Torghast, I should say. That'll probably go to Covenants, which we'll talk about in a bit. It's fun in the sense that the runs are unique depending on what powers you happen to get. I think you can compare Torghast to Island Expeditions in a lot of ways. The wings you run are rotated weekly, and the mobs you get are mostly random. The issue with Island Expeditions, though, is that the main thing that they were banking on, which was that each run was a different experience, wasn't really true. I mean, it was technically true, but it didn't really feel that way because each map basically boiled down to rush to get X Azerite before the enemy team. They tried to circumvent this mid-expansion by introducing some features such as those extractor machines that you had to defend, but ultimately it got pretty repetitive. With Torghast though, since the layout is different each time, and the abilities are so substantial, to me it does feel like there's more variety between each run. If you've ever played Diablo 3 and their Great Rift system, it's similar in a lot of ways, but instead of having a specific build and legendaries for every rift, each rift you choose your affixes out of a random selection of 3 per node. The only thing I don't care for, at least at this point, is the fact that it's just another weekly thing. These days, as you know, I don't really have a high tolerance for daily and weekly timers, but admittedly, I'm not really sure how they would make it work without one. If they don't have some sort of limit, it would be too strong of a method to gear up, so they'd have to nerf the gear to the point to where it's just irrelevant. That's the big catch with any new feature really, and you saw this issue with Island Expeditions and BFA since they were spammable and they always gave you that Azerite. You have to find a balance of making the rewards relevant enough to warrant doing the activity, and at the same time you have to limit it so it's not too overpowered. But if you do that too much, you have a situation like BFA where you have 30 daily and weekly activities to do, and it can just get overwhelming. I have 600 videos about the game, and I'm telling you guys, the most common feedback I get about BFA is, I hit the max level, and I got completely overwhelmed by these daily and weekly timers that I just quit. So what I want, or rather what I don't want for Shadowlands, is the same fate. Right now, honestly, it's not too bad. This is a list that I've tracked down, and a lot of them you can do 2 birds with 1 stone. However, I think if they get into this ritual of adding a couple new reputations per patch, or new daily and weekly systems like they did with BFA, it's going to send them down the same path, and it's going to burn people out. I was thinking, and I wanted to run this by you guys, but I think it would be a nice experiment where instead of having a bunch of these new flashy features like Torghast, instead to put more time and focus into making a better base game. Maybe instead of 8 dungeons have 12, or maybe an extra raid tier even, or a few more zones. I think BFA is proof that a bunch of flashy features don't necessarily make for a good expansion, and I think Classic shows that there's a market for having a very basic MMO that's just fun to play. The MA has also seen a change since I last covered it. As you know, if you saw my Shadowlands preview, this is the max level zone that has that daily meter where the jailer gets more and more upset the more time you spend in the zone, and you eventually get kicked out. Previously, it was very sandbox. You just sort of wandered around and killed rares, and now it looks like they're trying to add a bit more direction to it with events that pop up periodically. To me though, the MA is kind of inconsequential in the grand scheme of things. I mean, I'm sure it'll be important to gear up your character, but to me it's just not really as big of a focus they're making it out to be. It's pretty much a max level zone with rares and treasures that you've seen 100 times, except you essentially have a timer imposed on you to limit your gameplay within the zone. So for me, I'm more interested in the main features such as legendaries, so let's talk about those. I like the legendaries. I liked them in Legion too, It's just that at first the method of acquiring them was pretty frustrating. They changed it like 100 times over from the launch of Legion to its final state, but early on they were incredibly rare, so much so that people were like coming up with conspiracies that streamers had a higher drop chance to drive expansion sales. That was awesome. But putting that method of acquisition aside, I've always been a fan of them because I'm always a fan of making the loot more interesting. As you know, I've been very vocal about the main stat, stamina, secondary 1 and secondary 2 issue that they have going on, so seeing anything other than that is like a breath of fresh air. Now we just need to get those tier sets back. But the legendary system itself is one of the more exciting features for me, because I'm all about that character customization. Getting back on subject here though, next up we have Covenants. And oh boy, is this a controversial subject right now, I'll tell you what. I actually have a dedicated video planned for Covenants specifically, so I don't want to go too crazy with this quite yet, but my thoughts are basically, I'm for having some measure of difficulty or time investment in switching Covenants. The main issue people have here though is that they're quite substantial because they have abilities and buffs tied to them, and there's a setback in switching between them. You also have the Renown system, which you build with these Covenants over time to unlock upgrades, and this is reset when you switch, and furthermore, switching to a Covenant you've previously left requires a couple of weekly quests. To me, the way I look at it is that players, if they choose, at any point with the click of a button, they can change their race, they can change their faction, and they can change their spec. They can change just about anything with their character, in fact. You ever wonder why we have 4 stats today? It's because it's hard to switch from healer to DPS when all of your gear has mana per 5 in spirit, and it's hard to switch from melee DPS to healer when all of your gear has attack power and armor penetration. The entire game is set up in such a way that players have extreme control and versatility with what they want their characters to be, to the point that it's fundamentally detrimental to the RPG genre. Character progression and investment is so important for RPGs, I can't stress it enough. But since everything is now easily reversible, you lose that investment, and all solutions I've seen for Covenants basically boil it down to another row of talents. From what I've seen, people either want A, to be able to switch Covenants at any point with no hindrance, or B, they want the abilities and soul binding detached from them. To me, if you do that, there's basically no point to them though. The whole idea of Covenants, from what I gathered, is during leveling, you're introduced to each one, and at max level, you have to make a tough choice in siding with one. They want some weight in that choice, so removing that weight defeats the whole purpose. There are concerns with balance, which are definitely warranted. I saw Preach's video, and he was showing Covenant abilities making up like 40% of a certain spec's damage. That's not good, obviously, and they need to do better there. Ideally though, I think the best way it would work out is that, okay, this ability is best for Mythic Plus, that's what I care about, so that's what I want to excel in. Or maybe this is like the PvP Covenant for Shamans, or maybe this one generally is best for raiding. I think for me that's the ideal system, because you sort of have to pick and choose what you specialize in, and you're not the best at everything. Sort of like an RPG, huh? But the only question is if they can get that balance right. If they can, I think Covenants are fine as they are now, but that's a big if, obviously. I think one thing they should definitely change though is the method in switching. Right now it's set up in such a way that you have to complete 2 weekly quests to switch. I think it should be time consuming, but something you can do on your own time, so you can just say, hey, okay, I'm gonna grind this out. Again, this just gets into that issue of these arbitrary daily and weekly timers that just dominate the game. So again, this whole Covenant debacle is really spicy. These are my initial thoughts though. I might go into more detail later, but it's not something to lose sleep over, so don't worry about it too much. That's about it though, at least for all of the major stuff I think. In summary, I think it has good potential. Right now, the make it or break it feature for most people seems to be Covenants, so we'll just have to wait and see how they change, if at all, in the coming weeks as we prepare for release. Agree or disagree? I hope you found the video interesting or informative. Here's hoping for the best with Shadowlands. I'm going into it optimistically, but still pretty guarded. But other than that, thanks for watching the video, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.
Farewell for now, mortals. We hope you enjoyed today's video. See you again soon.